Hello again. One of the problems I have with those who are so vociferous in their support of trans ideology is that they try to represent the case as transsexuals being vulnerable and needed to be protected from the women who are fighting for female-only spaces. The whole concept of transphobia centres around this myth that male to female transsexuals need to be cosseted and protected from harm. Of course, we all know that this is absurd, and that the reality is that biological males are parading around in women's clothes, demanding that they be given access to lesbian clubs and so on. The only thing is, we can't say this out loud without being accused of endangering the physical and psychological well-being of transsexuals. It is, by the way, almost always biological males fighting for access to women's spaces, never the other way round. They wish to compete in women's sports, but when did you last hear of a biological woman who was cutting up rough because she couldn't join a men's rugby team, for example? The very idea makes us smile. I am a man, and I recognise that women want and need their own places. Refuges from domestic violence, for instance. Of course, a woman who has been raped will wish only to be seen by female doctors and nurses, but that is now denied to her, and even asking for it is likely to result in an accusation of transphobia. I don't have a problem with men dressing up as women or even being castrated so that their bodies look more like those of women. But I can see why many women do not regard such people as being women in the same way that they themselves are women. Although I am sure that most male to female transsexuals pose no threat to women, some obviously do. Some men are a menace to women, and putting on a frock and calling themselves Mary is not going to make them any less of a threat. When the Scottish Parliament passed the law which would allow anybody over the age of 16 to self-identify as a member of the opposite sex, a number of women pointed out the dangers and suggested that this would put women at hazard. They were duly denounced as transphobes. Now, in Scotland, we see just the sort of thing about which they were worried and that those pushing through the legislation said would never happen. The thumbnail to this video shows a man who's just been found guilty of two particularly brutal rapes. Since being charged with those offences, though, he has decided that he wants to change sex and that he's really a woman. This means that the news reports about the case, I give a link to one in the description of this video, refer to her committing the rapes and are sure always to say she rather than he. And of course, now that he has been convicted and remanded in custody, he's been sent to a women's prison. This then is the madness which lies at the end of this path, and many people, almost all of them women, warn that this is what would happen. What do you think will happen if that rapist is set loose in a women's prison? I think that we can all guess, and it probably will not entail his sitting down with the girls and chatting about makeup and hairstyles either. I ought to make two things clear. As I say, I have no objection to men or women wearing clothes more commonly adopted by the opposite sex, nor do I care if people take hormones or choose to have their bodies mutilated. None of this is my business. Nor am I saying that all, or even a lot, of male to female transsexuals are likely to pose a threat to women. Most of them won't. But cases such as this are cropping up increasingly, and we can see that the number of supposed women who have been convicted of offences such as rape and inflicting grievous bodily harm is increasing. None of these are women who were born women. They are men, such as the one in the thumbnail to this video, who are entirely male, apart from the fact that they wear makeup and women's clothing. This rapist's crimes will now be added to the statistics of female crimes. simply because he has made a declaration in this way.